make you you, as in this strictly material sense. If you were to cut off the arm, I mean, does that constitute part of you being dead, or a great part of you being dead? If you cut off the waist, and you can no longer walk, does that constitute of you being half dead? So maybe there is barriers in which somebody cannot, or maybe can't even at all, cannot at all be harmed or inflicted physically. And this is ultimately what it seems that immortality in a strictly physical sense would lead one to. So right now I've just explored two possibilities. The possibility of death equaling the annihilation of the thinking thing, the mind as it were, as opposed to the material body. And then B, the second thought, namely being that which the body is, I mean, death equals the annihilation of the physical body, and thereby also, I guess, including the mind and anything that it's connected with. When you feel a pinch, you understand it's you, bam. So in that strictly material sense, all you are is just a bunch of material, and the consciousness that seems to be consciousness is simply maybe an illusion, or maybe there's a better word for it, but it's nothing different or apart from a physical entity. Natural numbers and everything else would subsist in this illusion of the brain neural firing. Okay, what would happen if there was no more space? If you look at this, would be a nonsense picture right here, where there's a bunch of people scavenging for the last of their resources. Because if they can't die, they wouldn't need. I mean, food couldn't kill them, and if food couldn't kill them, they wouldn't have a need for food. So they wouldn't have a need to eat something other than just doing it out of just because they can sort of notions. Just because I don't need a banana, I don't need food to keep me alive, but I'm going to do it because I can, sort of thinking. And that's the only reason why they would want a banana or any sort of edible item. And it's with that that I think that an image like this would be absurd if everybody was immortal. And this is the next thing I want to get to. I did another slide on this. Let me see where it's at. Under what assumption are we dealing with when speculating about these ideas of immortality? So are we talking about one person being immortal, or are we talking about many people being immortal, or everybody being immortal? So I'm just going to, instead of saying a lot of people, I'm going to break this down into a more simplified version of speculation, which is going to be A, only one person is immortal, and B, being the other hypothetical scenario where everybody is immortal, as opposed to quite a few people, but not quite everybody, but not quite one person. Go figure. So I'm going to leave it as A and B according to this sense. Now, if we take immortality to be, and still going on your first, Marjore, our first bullet point, as I already structured in the beginning about, there being the problem of space, before we tackle the next one. I want to first tackle each of these points with under what assumption, A or B, of what I just brought up right now. So, one person is immortal in this world. And if we take death to be that thing where that one individual is the part of him that will continue on forever, as opposed to everybody else, is his thinking mind. If we take that as death A, as opposed to death B, which is the physical annihilation of him, that constituting death, death B, death A is going to that tells us that this person materially could deteriorate completely. His body could really just recycle back into the universe, as it were, into the world, and become, dirt, particles, ashes, other things, and recombine into nature. But the mind, the thinking thing that has an individual consciousness of its own, will persist and will consider thinking of itself, and perhaps not lose things like recollection or memories or sorts of things that we understand to be intelligence, such as the understanding of concepts and natural numbers and people and forms and recognitions of these sorts of objects and abstractions. So this thinking thing would not really seem to pose so much of a problem to everybody else as far as space is concerned, and as far as greed is concerned, which I'm going to get to in a second. Greed. And then if we were to take it under the assumption that still under A, if there's one person being immortal, that we understand death to be, death B, the physical annihilation of the body. If we take that and understand that to be death, then then immortality in this sense would mean that this person could never physically be harmed, because the minute you stick an arrow in him, that's supposed to cause him closer to death, but somehow magically he's not going to die. Or if you could actually penetrate his body, all that's just going to reform back. And so literally there can be no harm unless repaired towards this immortal person, which everybody ought to be afraid of, because this person at the bend of his will could do anything he wants, anything he or she wants. And if one day he's feeling greedy, he could get away with simple things like, if he wants to date a girl and she doesn't consent, and this person, because he has the power, untouchable power really, to do whatever he wants. Not tackling even if he would want to do that. That's actually another interesting idea to speculate. But the fact that the law can't touch him, because if they tried to pin him down and shoot him or something, that wouldn't work, unless of course they piled a huge boulder on him and they stuck him all the way underground and physically he couldn't get out. He was just there for all of eternity. That would kind of suck, and that probably would be the worst punishment for an immortal, if if you think about that. I mean, the only punishment you could do is confine them in a space where they literally cannot get out, and because they will not die physically, it's an infinite object being stopped by a circular and immovable force. You're confined by the largest boulder, and physically you can't move it. But given your immortality, you cannot die. It probably would be the worst punishment. But anyway, my point is that greed would subsist, granted any normal sort of law, like confinement in jail. Well, you could literally just walk out of your cell when the guard lets you brush your teeth or something, or literally kill every inmate there without being harmed, or execute the president or execute key officials or whoever you had to run things the way the person with power could see fit. And if that power was granted, there's every reason one ought to be afraid of this person. And so immortality would be this struggle between a continuum of this person's will and dictate. This person, when he chooses or feels that he wants to be a vigilante and stop a terrorist attack or a natural disaster from happening, he could do that, and he could show up as a hero, and everybody will praise him for his heroic action. And maybe for a long time of the span of his continuous life, what would be considered a long span to a regular average person looking on. There is no reason to think that at one point somewhere along the line he's going to choose to be an asshole and choose his reptilian nature, as it were, to do what he wants when he wants. Gaji's ring. Plato's an analogy from Glycon. Plato's brother Glycon, his idea that if you could do anything you want, why follow the law? Why follow social conformity? There's no need for a social contract if you're not afraid of other people. The community would be afraid of this person, and there's every reason that they should be. Okay, so under the assumption of A, that's what we get from this. That under the assumption that only one person is immortal, we've tackled the idea that if this person, of course, what death would mean, and thereby what immortality means to this person. Now, if we look at this under the scope of notion B, that everybody is immortal. Now, this is a lot easier to tackle. If everybody is immortal in the physical sense, I'm sorry, in the immaterial sense, the Descartes thinking thing, if everybody would live forever, then it would seem sort of like this world is